Hey, it's Jill. I wanted to start off this episode letting you know that this episode's a little different because I interviewed two different moms from the group Little Lobbyists at separate times. So this episode is the story of Stacy Staggs in the beginning, and then it goes to Alexis Stadler. They are both incredible women doing incredible things for their children and for their community, and I hope you enjoy this and you leave feeling inspired to create a better world for yourself and those around you. Welcome, everybody. My name is Jill Jonathan. I'm the host of The World We Want, and today I have Stacy Staggs. She is from the group Little Lobbyists. They are a people-powered, family-led organization with members and chapters across the country. So welcome, Stacy. Really happy to have you here.
Thank you, Jill. I'm happy to be here.
So just, let's begin with tell me about Little Lobbyist, what it is, what you all do, and why you are part of it.
Certainly. Um, First things first, Little Lobbyists is a family-led and disability-led organization. We are a national nonprofit. We advocate for kids with complex medical needs and disabilities in the spheres of healthcare access, community inclusion, and public education.
So why are you part of this group, Stacy?
Well, I'll tell you, I'm a mom first. Everything else that I do comes from that. And it happens that both of my daughters, my twin girls, who just turned 12 last week, each live their lives with complex medical needs and disabilities. So I will say, back in the beginning, in 2017, when Little Lobbyist was first being formed out of sheer necessity, because healthcare access was at risk under the first Trump administration, which sounds a little quaint based
Right.
on where we are right now, but recognizing that threat and that worry, because it would affect our families directly, just a group of families in the DC area said, what if we just go down there and see if anybody wants to talk to us? So I think it was 3 or 4 families with all of their equipment they use for a living with them. So there were kids with wheelchairs, there were service animals, there were nurses that accompanied, and portable ventilators. And, we're kind of a conspicuous group. Just walked up to Capitol Hill and walked the hallways, and it's amazing the people you'll find, going in between meetings. One of the first conversations we had was with Senator Elizabeth Warren.
Wow.
And, she was very encouraging, very kind, and she has been throughout. But yeah, one day on Capitol Hill became many. Our leadership was formed out of just parents. It is completely grassroots. We are, just a collection of families who said, wait, this isn't right. Our kids need access to healthcare. And over the last few years, yes, we have grown that into a nationwide footprint. We have chapters in, I think it's 7 or 8 states at this point, largely swing states. But we are just helping families share their stories, advocating for the things I mentioned, healthcare, community inclusion, and public education, and just getting the stories told so that our legislators have our families in mind when they're making these very important decisions.
And what's something that you wish, legislators, but just people in general, knew about kids with complex medical needs and disabilities?
I mean, every child is a child first. Our kids have interests and aspirations and concerns and a lot of doctor's appointments, a lot of, surgeries and time in the hospital and with multiple doctors. But we also, play, adaptive kickball. Some of our kids are swimmers, some of our kids are musicians. And my daughters in particular are musicians. You can hear my daughter clinking on her guitar. We're doing fun things and everyday things that every other child is doing. Just that some of us need support in different ways to meet those goals. But I'm a mom like everyone else is a mom, and I love my children who are like any other child. We're all pretty regular, typical families who are just trying to make our way in the world. We want our kids to not only survive but to thrive, and they need help to do that.
You mentioned the first Trump administration almost seems quaint at this point, which is wild. I don't think we ever would have thought that. But
Mhm.
where we are today, I want to talk a little bit about RFK Jr. And I know you all have
Mm.
been outspoken about that and how he's putting Americans' health at risk. Can you just tell a little bit about how that's affecting your family and other families that are part of your group?
Um, so our families spend a lot of time in doctors' offices and coordinating across different specialists for whatever the child's individual combination of needs are. Because of that, we trust the doctors, we've trust the nurses and everybody who's on the medical staff that number one, they know what they're talking about. Number two, they're committed and engaged and invested in our kids being successful and getting the care that they need. And they've done their homework, they've done their research, they're up on the latest things, and we're dealing with doctors across the country in some cases who are at the top of their fields. And I think it's important to say that not one of them is aligned with what's coming out from RFK Jr. We've always known that vaccines are safe, though not without risk. And there are some of our kids who aren't able to be vaccinated, which makes it all the more important for everyone else around them
Right.
to be vaccinated if they can safely do so. But we absolutely have seen what happens when people aren't protected, and people have a harder time getting through whatever infection it is, or whether it's the flu or a case of COVID or RSV. All of these things hit our children harder maybe than their peers, and that's why we know the protections are so important. Many of us are still wearing a mask when we're out in public. We're coordinating our appointments to be earlier in the day, so not a lot of people have been through the office yet. There's thoughtful travel that's being arranged when we need to. So we're paying attention because it's part of keeping our kids safe and healthy as they can be. What I think is important for everyone to understand is that RFK Jr. is not a trained doctor. He has another profession. And when I'll also, if I can, talk about the recent press conference where they mentioned that Tylenol, specifically the brand name,
Right.
Tylenol is somehow linked to autism, and it's just no scientific evidence that leads to that statement. And it's hard when we are so used to listening to the experts and taking guidance and consulting not only with our medical teams, but each other. And other families with who might have similar diagnoses. There's a lot of just medical knowledge in our group that we're trading with each other and having these conversations with. So seeing someone who doesn't have the background, doesn't have the training, but does inexplicably, in my mind, have such a seat of power where they can dictate national policy, and to come out with something so reckless and so unsupported by science it's jarring, and it puts us at risk because some people believe that. They hear about a link between Tylenol, pregnancy, and autism, and now they're not taking pain relievers, or they're not taking fever reducers or giving fever reducers to their kids. And there's real risk in that as well. I watched the recent hearing that RFK Jr. participated in, and I did not see a man who knew what he was talking about or who was in control of his own emotions. I saw someone who was angry and belligerent and, not in a place to be helpful. So it's hard for me personally that people listen to that and go, that guy knows what he's talking about. I'm going to follow his directions, when to me it's so clear that he doesn't. And again, it's not his profession. So like, why would we be asking him medical questions?
That's a very measured response. I'm impressed. I'm impressed. I'm sure you have some other thoughts that you've shared.
Yeah, I mean, off camera it includes swear words, but
Yeah, I totally warranted. And so I want to talk about Medicaid as well, and why is it so important to protect Medicaid for families like yours?
gosh, this has been on my heart for a really long time. Not only is Medicaid the thing that keeps my daughter safe at home with us, it is also the backbone of the American healthcare landscape. And protecting it means protecting access to care for everyone, not just those who have a loved one who is on Medicaid. There's so much disinformation about what Medicaid is, what it isn't, who it helps, who it hurts. And it's really hard to cut through the hostility, honestly, that some people have to the Medicaid program. When it's only designed to help people who need it, whether it's age, income, or disability. It's the people who are most vulnerable in our society, and we're supposed to care about them.
Right.
It's not a radical viewpoint. It's a regular middle of the road. We should care about our neighbors. And for me as a mom, as I'm doing Medicaid advocacy and I'm trying to share my family's story, and I'm talking about my sweet daughter Emma and all the cool things that she can do because she has Medicaid support in place, and some person on the internet comes back and starts screaming about what undocumented immigrants, and they're stealing, there's some like national fraud campaign, a $1 trillion price tag, and the cuts that are happening are only going to affect this one particular subset of people. And I'm surprised every time, because number one, you have to have a social security card to be eligible. You have to be a U.S. citizen or a legal resident, and like that fact is just missed. And then the idea that Medicaid is so, loosely administrated that anybody can hop in and walk out with a Medicaid card is clearly someone who doesn't understand the process, because actually Medicaid is managed very, very tightly. We have annual recertifications, we have semi-annual reviews for hours, we have quarterly check-ins with our case management team, we have monthly reviews, they share nursing notes. Like, the amount of administration that goes around my child is extraordinary. And I know that because I'm the one filling out piles of paperwork on repeat. Like, I can't just come back 6 months later and go, no change, same, like it's a chronic health condition, so it's the same as it's been. I have to start from the beginning every single time and tell the story every single time, and feel the trauma of their early birth every single time. And then I have to make sure I have, whatever 14 signatures are collected, and letters from the doctors, and, information from the school with their IEPs, and just like compile this, I mean, it's electronic now, but in my mind, it's this much paperwork, that says, hey, my daughter's still here and she still needs the help. So I keep getting surprised when people come back and say, the whole thing is riddled with fraud. Undocumented immigrants are taking benefits that belong to they're so angry and they're so loud and they're so wrong that it's hard to present facts or to share our story or like an actual example of how they're not correct, because they're just dug in to the idea that people who deserve it aren't going to be impacted. They're going to keep their coverage. And I'll be honest, I'm having a hard time breaking through that despite having knowledge and facts on my side.
Yeah. I mean, and it's,
So,
it's not just coming from like some outliers online, like it's coming from the top. Like the stuff our vice president, JD Vance, has been saying is just like,
yeah.
where are you getting that from?
I actually did save a quote from him, I think it was a couple days ago, that the Democrats want to keep $1 trillion, want to keep paying $1 trillion for, he used different words, but for undocumented immigrants to have our health care coverage. And I mean, you're right, because it's coming from what should be a place of knowledge and power and reach. People who believe him are running with it. And they're saying, I don't have to make a decision. I don't have to do any research because he said that's what's going on. So that's what I'm carrying forward. And I think if they could just sit down and read a bit, or have a conversation with a family who's actually going through all of these things, that, maybe we could change some minds. Maybe we could soften some hearts. Maybe we could activate some like-minded people to the risk that extends beyond those of us who directly use Medicaid. I mean, what's happening in North Carolina is not going to affect just the 3 million Medicaid beneficiaries, but all 11 million of us who live in this state. And I just don't have the feeling that people understand that.
Oh, definitely not. And then, so I just, we're recording this the day after the government shutdown. And it's interesting to hear the president and vice president and speaker of the House reasons that the government has shut down. And I'm just curious from you, like, what's your response to that and how is that going to affect your life?
I do support, I am glad that the Democrats in the Senate held the line. It is an impossible situation. There will be harm to a lot of people regardless. What was important is that Democrats are not participating in the downfall of our democracy. Like, is it that big of a deal? Yes, it's that big of a deal. It is the future. It is the immediate and the long-term future of our country that Republicans are messing with. And the House wasn't even there yesterday. So we're heading towards a shutdown. The countdown clocks are going. Democrats are giving press conferences. They're gathering storytellers. They're standing on the Capitol steps. They're in the chambers saying we need to have a vote. And the Republican side of the aisle is empty. There was one guy in the House who gavelled in with the Republicans, and that's it. I want people who I've elected to represent me to care about the fact that we're about to all feel harm, and to do everything in their power to stop that from happening and to negotiate in good faith, which is a phrase I'm using a lot these days because good faith matters and bad faith is really easy to recognize. And it's far more rampant than anybody would want. So, yeah, I mean, as the countdown clock, I was actually up past midnight last night. I I was afraid to close my eyes because I knew I was waking up in a different world today. And the first thought I had this morning when I woke up was, here we go. Um, how long is this going to last? How many people in my state, in my county, in my country, in my friend group, how many of us are going to make it through whatever this next phase looks like? And while my primary concern is the four walls of my house, I'm also very worried about other little lobbyist families and families who need us but haven't found us yet. I want to, bring more people into the fold so that they know they're not alone, so that they have our collective voice and our collective power and audacity. And that's one of the great things about Little Lobbyists I should have shared early on, is that we are an audacious group. We will take a seat at the table and talk to anyone who is willing to listen, and some who are less so. And we will share facts, information, stories, and joy. And that comes from our founder and executive director, who is just an incredibly audacious woman. She does not have the fear of talking to anyone. She will walk straight up to someone like Chuck Schumer or Nancy Pelosi, or just any of our high-profile legislators, and say, "Hi, my name's Elena. This is my daughter Ziabara. Here's what we're doing." And having seen that, and now I'm modeling that, and we're helping other families kind of find that inner audacity, and the belief that you belong at the table. I think that, being nervous or not being a public speaker, or, not being comfortable in some settings is a detriment, because it keeps those necessary conversations from happening. So a big part of what we're doing is encouraging and empowering people who in their regular lives don't interact with federal legislators. I mean, who does? But, just helping them feel comfortable and confident and like you belong, because you do. It's the people's house. It is our government. It is for the people. And we are those people who we're talking about. So yeah, audacity is just a really big thing. And one of the reasons why I'm so enamored and engaged with Little Lobbyists, because we are in the room where it happens.
And you're just going to have to keep showing up right now. I'm like, if now's not the time, when is it? And so I love that. Like, it's a call out. You know that there are other families out there that haven't found you yet. So I hope, like, this is why I hope we can just keep spreading the word. Like, there are people for you. Like, community is more important than ever.
Absolutely.
It's always important, and we're going to need community to get through it. So, Stacy, just to close out, because I call this show The World We Want, can you finish this sentence? I want a world, and then just tell me what kind of world you want.
I want a world where everyone has what they need and can focus on what they want. I want a world where everyone flourishes and finds joy and community and just all of the things that the abundance. I want a world that celebrates the abundance that we have. There is a lot of good happening. There is a lot of power in doing the right thing and having other people see that. And I want that to just grow exponentially forever.
Yeah, I love that. That's really beautiful. I think all of us can get behind that. And just before we go, if someone's watching that needs this community, that knows somebody that wants to be part of it, how can they find you?
Yes, we are on all of the social media platforms. The handle is Little Lobbyists, plural. You can, we'll come up in a search. We also have community events if we're somewhere, if you're somewhere that has a state chapter. we do in-person work a lot as well as things online. So we're really not hard to find. I really want to encourage anyone who's curious or has questions or do I belong? Yes, yes, you do. Come into the fold. We will get you sorted. Let's go.
I love that. Do I belong? Yes, you belong, and it's going to take all of us. So thank you for joining me, Stacy. Thank you for the work you do. Thank you, everybody, for watching, and just keep moving forward and creating the world that you want. Welcome back, everyone. I just talked to Stacy Staggs about Little Lobbyist and what an incredible organization that is. And I'm very lucky to talk to someone else who's part of Little Lobbyist, which is Alexis Stadler. And welcome, Alexis. And she's just going to tell us a little bit more about her personal story, because when we're talking about our legislators and the decisions that they're making, it affects real families. And so I just think it's really important to get those stories out there so people understand. I think that's the first thing. And the second thing is, if you're a family like Alexis's, as she talks, and you don't have a community, Little Lobbyists can be your community, because that's how we're all going to get through this. Is community and, really connecting with other people. So first of all, Alexis, just let's go right into it. Let's talk about your daughter, Kinsley. Can you just tell me about her?
Yeah, and thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here. So my daughter Kinsley, her name is Kinsley Ray, Rae, and we call her our little ray of sunshine, which is just the perfect way to describe her. She is 6.5 years old. She is full of spunk and spice and everything nice. But she has had a rough go of it. She was born full term at 38 weeks, and we knew when I was pregnant that she was going to have NF1, neurofibromatosis type 1, which is a genetic disorder that can cause tumors to grow on the nervous system in the body. And my husband has it, but he has it very mild. But even within which we have learned firsthand, even within the same family, NF diagnoses can vary greatly. So when she was born, though, she was having difficulties with breathing, with feeding, with other things that were not necessarily NF related. And that kind of just launched us into the world of medical complexity. So at the time so we have another daughter, Charlotte, who's 8 now. So they're 18 months apart. So we had, an 18-month-old and an infant, and we didn't know what way was up. And by the time Kinsley was 2 months old, she had spent a couple weeks in the hospital. Cause she came home, she didn't spend any time in the NICU, but came home and then had to be readmitted because she couldn't eat. She wouldn't gain weight. Just a lot of issues that no one could figure out what was going on with her. So I, like any mom would do, was desperate to find answers on what was going on with her. And I just dove into PubMed. And based on vibes and a bunch of articles, I came up with my own differential of what I thought was possibly going on with her, and just started looking for doctors to help. We started traveling. Like we live in North Carolina, but we went to like Rochester, Minnesota, to Mayo Clinic for 2 weeks. Like, we started doing all of these things, but along with all of this medical testing and medical appointments comes bills, medical bills.
Right.
And she did, when she was released from the hospital when she was 2 months old, she did come home on a feeding tube. So that comes with supplies, formula, specialized formula, all of the things that you need. And very, very quickly, things were piling up. I was a school counselor at the time, so I worked for the state of North Carolina, and my husband was a contractor with Cisco, so he wasn't like a full-time employee. So our insurance was through us and through me, and it was with the state of North Carolina, and the state employee health insurance is not great. So we were really struggling, and we applied for Medicaid, and the Community Alternatives Program, the CAP-C waiver in our state. It's called Katie Beckett waiver in other states, TEFRA in other states. There's a bunch of different names, but basically it's a Medicaid waiver that they don't look at the parent's income, they look at the child's income and how sick the child is. And we were told she's not sick enough, she doesn't qualify, even though she was on a feeding tube. no daycare would take her, no, she was choking on her own saliva, like couldn't breathe sometimes. So, that's a lot of people are like, oh, people abuse Medicaid. I really honestly don't know how, because what the fight that we went through to get, like, on the beneficiary side to get Medicaid was very, very long, very, very arduous. And it, so we applied for the first time in August of 2019, and we went through this whole process, and they said she doesn't qualify, like, basically, sorry, not sorry. I appealed it. We went, like, I had to go before a judge, and it didn't go. So we applied again, and we were approved like March 10th, 2020. So right before the
Wow.
world shut down. And but it was a very long process, and at this point we had accumulated so much medical debt that we were looking at declaring bankruptcy.
Oh my
And
God.
we had we had moved to be closer to family to help with our older daughter. So we had moved into like a really tiny house, like a really small house in a not great neighborhood, just to try and stay afloat. And at this point, so she finally gets approved for Medicaid, and that really, really saved us. I still had to declare bankruptcy from everything that accumulated prior, but we were able to get our bearings enough to get out of the unsafe neighborhood, get more supports in place for Kinsley with therapies and things that, because we had private insurance, but they weren't covering as much therapy as she needed. They weren't covering her tube feeding supplies. They weren't covering any kind of nursing or CNA services when she couldn't go to a traditional childcare setting because her care was too complex. So when and she eventually got diagnosed with hypo after month right before she got approved for Medicaid. She got diagnosed with hypophosphatasia, which is a rare metabolic condition that causes the bones to disintegrate, and like really weak bones can cause issues with kidneys, a bunch of other stuff. So between that, the NF, and then she also has a rare genetic duplication of unknown significance that they said it was kind of, geneticists said, lightning struck at the same place too many times.
Wow.
So she's very much on her own timeline. Now, fast forward, we get Medicaid. She's rocking and rolling in therapies. Things are doing good. We're, you know, and in around January of 2022, I just started noticing some things and that were giving me pause. So I started asking questions again. I was like, I think there's something neurological going on. I think that, I'm seeing this. I'm seeing some more like what ended up being focal seizures. So like just her not being able, like her head's getting bigger. There's just the weird things happening. And again, told like no one can figure out, like they're just like, you're fine, you're an anxious mom, like she's fine, like her MRI when she was 2 months old is clear, like nothing's wrong. I got laughed out of a neurosurgeon's office. It ended up being that she had brain cancer. So, and that was like, I started that process in January. They didn't find the tumor until May, and that was just because I fought for so long to get
Right.
a scan. So she ended up having brain cancer, and she so she started chemo and did 70 weeks of IV chemo every single week, which is really, really tough. And the chemo itself almost killed her quite a few times. Between the toxicity of it, the blood infections, having other pre-existing medical issues being exacerbated by that. So she went from making so much progress that we were talking about decreasing some therapies to going the complete opposite direction. And Medicaid was such a huge lifeline for us during that process, because she was having to spend a lot of time in the hospital, and because we had access to nursing services at home through Medicaid, we had access to, like, if they were like, okay, she needs to be on an IV antibiotic, I'm like, okay, we can get that at home and do that at home, so she could be in her environment with her sister, with her family, because she couldn't go to school, because she was in preschool when she first got diagnosed, but like she couldn't go to school, she couldn't do all these things that she needed to do, but at least she could be home because we had Medicaid services. And then on the days she did feel good, she would sometimes get to go to school, but she got to stay in her community throughout her cancer fight, despite all of the other medical issues she had, because we had access to Medicaid and CAPC services. So At this point, Kinsley is off cancer treatment, but she will never be considered in remission or like it'll never be gone. Her tumor is inoperable. And she's actually been diagnosed with epilepsy because she has epilepsy, both frontal lobe and seizures originating from the tumor site. But like she's intermittently, like there's a lot going on with her where we really need help. She needs hand to hand assistance for almost everything at this point, and we have she has nursing at home so that my husband and I can work. I am actually I moved into private practice as a therapist now. So, and my husband works for Cisco, like he got hired full time. So we have access to better like health insurance for our family and as for primary health insurance. But even that still does not cover all of the things that Medicaid covers for us so that she can be home. She's in first grade. You know, she gets to go to school every day. She has a nurse who goes with her, but Medicaid has paid for her wheelchair, her extra therapies, her tube feeding supplies, like all of these things that keep her home and keep her with our family so that we can all be together instead of her having to live in a hospital.
Wow. And I mean, I think anybody can understand that if you're a parent or even if you're not a parent, how important that is to be at home and be with your people. I think that's healing as well.
Yes.
So, I mean, I'm like, I don't know how anybody could not understand the importance of Medicaid. What are your thoughts of the big, beautiful bill? And then the recent government shutdown, because we're recording this 2 days after that happened. So just curious what you think about all of that.
I think it sucks.
Yeah.
Just being blunt, we, with our work with Little Lobbyists, Kinsley and I went to Washington, D.C. 3 times this summer. And on the third trip, my husband, Derek, and our daughter, Charlotte, got to join us as well. And we got to go as a family. But, you know, I knew it was bad in DC, and like I really knew that there was a lot going on where people on the Republican side were not caring about kids like ours. But to see it firsthand and see people like seeing kids who are just trying to be kids and having wheelchair races in the Capitol building while, going to lobby so that they can be home with their families and be in their community and fight. These are 6, 7, 8, 9, 10-year-old kids going to members of Congress and saying, "Hey, like we need healthcare. We need these services so that we can get to be kids." And seeing just the utter disregard for that, and just they would be like, "Oh, they're so cute and this and that," and like give, like kind of placate you, but like what you could tell that there was a lack of care and human decency there, and that was it's kind of appalling. But
Yeah.
I just, yeah, and I just still can't at this point understand that this is where our country is at this point, and that we have Republicans saying, "Oh, this is because Democrats want health care for illegal immigrants," and
Yeah.
and all that, and like, first of all, they can't get help. Like they can't apply for it. Like it's a bunch of nonsense that's being spewed. It's talking points that are being spewed by their side to try and rile people up who are not educated enough on the actual intricacies of what it's like to apply for Medicaid, what it's like to apply for benefits, and saying, "Oh, this is what they're trying to do," but that's not what it is at all. Democrats are trying to make sure that the most vulnerable US citizens are taken care of and not left hung out to dry.
I guess my next question for you is what would you want? Like, how can our country actually help families like yours with kids with complex medical needs and disabilities? Like, if you could get the ears of people who are actually going to listen to you and do something, what would you say? What would help you?
I just don't like. I think I always go back to, how do you convince people to care about other people? And
Yeah.
I feel like that is something that has gone away in our country, that it's very much us versus them right now. And I could wax poetic for hours on why I think that is with the current administration since he entered the arena, what is it, almost 10 years ago now for his first presidential run. And I think that the divisiveness that started with that has really separated people. And, I'm registered Democrat. I have liberal beliefs, but at the end of the day, my political beliefs boil down to I give a shit about other people. That's just what it is. And I think that people have to be able to open their minds and say, like, okay, yeah, this may not affect me, but look at who it is affecting. Like, what, and the big Republican talking point is waste, fraud, and abuse, and that's what they're trying to cut. They're not trying to cut services from people who need it, but studies have shown that only 1% of the actual money that goes into Medicaid is waste, fraud, and abuse. And a lot of it is not on the beneficiary side. Like, it's not on the side of the people who are getting the benefits. It's on the provider side. So
Wow.
you're saying that you need to cut almost $1 trillion to cut waste, fraud, and abuse and give tax breaks to billionaires. Meanwhile, there's kids like my daughter Kinsley who are battling cancer, who are going to have to live in a hospital. Because at the end of the day, if we don't have Medicaid to pay for her supplies and we don't have access to her supplies, where am I going to have to take her? The hospital, because they have to treat her. And she should get to be home with her friends, getting
Yes.
to go to she's a member of Girl Scouts, getting to go to Girl Scouts, getting to her favorite specials class is art in school. Like, she should get to go to art class with her friends on Fridays. Like, she shouldn't have to. She should get to live in her community and be a kid and not suffer the consequences because rich people want to get richer.
I mean, you're just laying it all out. I'm like, that's exactly what's
Sorry.
happening.
Yeah.
So yeah, so just to like bring it full circle to little lobbyists and community, and you're talking about the importance of Kinsley being at home with her family. Talk to me a little bit about what being part of Little Lobbyist has meant for your family.
Oh, you have all day. But I it has just been the greatest experience, not just for Kinsley and I, because like I said, her and I went 3 times, but my husband and my daughter as well. So, my husband, myself, and my older daughter are all, and Kinsley too, we're all neurodivergent, but my husband and I and my 8-year-old are all autistic, and we're all different flavors of autism. And, even my husband, who most people would meet, like, he doesn't talk to anyone. He doesn't like, and he has really bad social anxiety, and he finds it really hard to make connections with people because of that, particularly in regards to the trauma our family has had with Kinsley and what goes into her care. And even when he came to DC and he saw, like, all the little lobbies families got together, it was so amazing to see him, like, opening up and talking to other families and just feeling that community. Because a lot of times right now it feels like we're screaming into the void, and that no one's listening, and that no one cares. But when you're with other people who care as much as you do and are willing to put in the work to say, this is not right, this is not okay, and we need to do something about it, that it just feels like a warm hug when you're with those kind of people. And, like, seeing him open up in that way. Our daughter Charlotte, she like I said, she's autistic. She had a selective mutism diagnosis at one point. Like, she would just go mute and not talk to anybody. And when we were at the 60-hour vigil for Medicaid in July, we were at the community table dinner, and they asked if anyone wanted to, like, come up on stage and share why Medicaid was important to them. And she goes, "Mommy, I'm going," and runs. And I said, "What?" Like, because this is a child who's terrified to speak to anybody. And she went up on stage and shared why Medicaid was important to her, and said that it's important because she wants to be able to spend time with her sister, and when her sister is at the hospital, she really misses her. And I my heart like, just exploded in that moment, because I saw my child who like has trouble speaking to just people one on one get up on stage and say, this is important because I want to be with my sister. And she made a sign for the opening rally that said, "I'm sad and really mad at the government." She is getting involved, and, like, I am seeing her blossom so much because she's getting to be with people who feel just as passionately and strongly about her. And I think the cool thing about Little Lobbyists is it's not just the adults speaking, it's our kids having a voice too. And like letting them say why this stuff is important to them. And I just, and again, like it really just feels like a hug when you really need it, because like just getting to talk to the other families, like these are some of the people that I talk to the most now, like the group chats we have, like and we have one where it's just like us talking about our day. We have one where we're like, okay, this is happening, what do we need to do, where do we need to go, what where do we need boots on the ground, like it's like a family. And I know people say that about like jobs and stuff like that all the time, and like it sounds cliche, but when you're in it, when you have a child who's medically complex and disabled and or both, like it can feel very, very isolating. And because most people do not understand what our day to day looks like and how
Yeah.
hard that is. And so a lot of times we find ourselves having to mask and just say like everything's okay. Meanwhile, it's not. But people who aren't going through this don't necessarily want to
Right.
hear all of it all the time. They don't want, and they don't understand, and they can mean well, but they just don't get it on the same level. And having that connection real to the other Little Lobbyist families has really helped me be able to process some of my trauma and work through it, but also just feel like I am not alone in this, and that I don't think I'm ever going to be alone again, and that this is forever. And I'm really, really grateful for that, not just for myself, but for my kids, and like just for, and I'm rambling now, but just for Kinsley too, like getting to see other kids who are disabled, and like
Right.
just like they're like, oh, I have a Mickey button, I have a mini one, or this, my wheelchair is this color, and like talking about stuff and like just relating to each other on a level that she does not get on the day to day, because there's just not that many disabled kids in her life. And I think something else that is really remarkable is because Little Lobbyist works with other like partner organizations, we meet a lot of disabled adults and that are out there doing like amazing work and living these great fulfilling lives. And it is wonderful for children who are disabled to see that adults can grow up and be
Right.
disabled and still do everything they want to do. When we were at the closing ceremony for the 60-hour vigil, Bob Williams, who is a huge, huge advocate for disability rights, was on stage speaking, and he did his speech through his AAC device. And Kinsley had just gotten access, like we had just started the trial for her AAC device over the summer, because her speech is, she doesn't stop talking, but a lot of it's impaired because of where the tumor is. So it's hard for other kids to understand her always. So we started trialing it so that she could like communicate with peers. But she was being a little bit hesitant about it, something new, and just, kids are worried about what other people are going to think. And she saw Bob using his AAC device on stage at the Capitol giving a speech, and she taps me and goes, "Mommy, he has a talker like me." And that was the most beautiful moment, because I was watching my child see in real time, like that just because things are different for her doesn't mean that it has to be any less.
Yeah.
And I think Little Lobbyist is just the best community to be a part of, to see that.
Wow. I am like holding back tears, honestly. Like the whole thing. It's like, it's beautiful. I mean, it's like hard, it's struggle, but then just like not being alone in it is just something that's really beautiful. So Alexis, I call this show The World We Want, and I'm just trying to encourage people to think about and dream about the world you want, and then to do what you can to create that world. So can you finish this sentence? I want a world, and then just tell me what is the world that you want?
I'm trying to think of the perfect word, but I want a world where I guess I kind of go back to what I said before. I want a world where people care about each other, and and care about others who are different than them. Just because something doesn't affect you doesn't mean that it's not important, and that you shouldn't be speaking up for what is right.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, we would be so much better off. Thank you for sharing your story. My hope is that sharing stories like this can maybe get us closer to that world. And then for people who are struggling on their own, just maybe to connect with other people so they don't have to do it all alone. So thank you for joining me. Thank you, everybody. And, just go out there and create the world that you want. Bye.
Thank you so much.